synopsis of the methods of sorcery at work in the world, largely, okay? Or mind control, if you will. What we talked about, we ended with this slide in part one. This is a painting by the artist Alex Gray, who paints very brilliant spiritual artwork. He depicted the dichotomy between chronically staying in the left brain here in this image, on this side of the painting. If you place yourself as the world tree, the Gaia tree, this painting is called Gaia, okay? The spirit of the earth. You see the tree is set aflame. It's blazing. There's pollution in the air. There are technology in the sky. He depicts it with the moon on this side, darkness, the night. Okay, there's blood running through the streams, and it's just chaos. This is what happens when we become chronically imbalanced to the left brain. Conversely, if we can make a spiritual connection with the right brain hemisphere, the creative side of ourself, the sacred feminine, if you will, then a world of balance and order can come into view, which you see there depicted on the right side of that image. So, part two, the problem that we face as a species. George Orwell, who wrote the book 1984 about a total fascist dictatorship takeover of the entire world, said that if liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. And that may be the case. I don't think it's necessarily going to be the case in this room, in this bookstore, because I think more people here may be already somewhat aware of these types of topics that I'm going to talk about tonight, and hence they're coming out to hear more about it. But that is the case for many individuals in the world. They do not want to hear what is wrong, but unfortunately, they do need to hear it, because if we're going to do anything about it, we have to get this information to more people. Vernon Howard, philosopher, said that human sickness is so severe that few can bear to look at it, but those who do will become well. If we face the shadow of ourselves, we can conquer it. If we keep ignoring it, it will rise up, embarrass us, and eventually destroy us. We need to look at the dark side of ourselves and face it without fear if we're going to do anything about it and ultimately conquer it and solve our problems. Soren Kierkegaard made this statement. He said there are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true. The other is to refuse to accept what is true. And I would go farther than this. I would say these are the only two reasons that human beings ever really experience suffering. We deny truth. We believe in things that actually aren't real, and then we refuse to accept what the truth actually is. That's why we experience suffering in the world. The questions for this particular part of the presentation, which I'm going to address in order, are the following. What is the nature of the problem that we collectively face? Who or what is creating this problem? How is this problem manifested in the world, manifested in our reality? And is there an underlying agenda to what is actually taking place? And if there is an underlying agenda, what is it? So in this part of the presentation, I'll be addressing the first three questions. I will not be getting to the underlying agenda tonight. That will be in part 3. I will be taking them in order, and the bulk of the presentation will be taken up by question 3. What is the methodology that is used to perpetuate this imbalance in consciousness on this planet? This is the nature of the problem that we face. In one sentence, in a nutshell, a small cabal of evil sorcerers controls our whole planet by manipulating the consciousness of its people into a vibration of fear. That is it. That is the problem that's going on here. That's what's happening. Okay? We are being manipulated into lower states of consciousness, fear-based states of consciousness. And by doing that, we're easier to control. So, this manipulation effort you can visualize as either a pyramid or a spider's web. If you take a look at a pyramid from above, you know, a triangular shaped pyramid, you could look at it from above, and it would look like there's a central part, and then spokes radiating out from it. So if you want to visualize it like that, like a spider's web with the spider at the center, that's one way of looking at it. It's presented here as a pyramid. Some may have seen this graphic. It's a compartmentalized system, a system of hierarchy or rank and compartmentalization, meaning what one side is doing, the other side does not know. A need-to-know basis, so to speak. You do this and keep your head down, somebody else is doing this and keeping their head down, and people do not see how the entire picture fits together. Compartmentalization. And hierarchy. Okay? At higher levels of the pyramid, there is more knowledge and understanding of the agenda. Lower levels of it, there are much more people involved, but they have no idea of what the interconnected agenda that is taking place at hierarchically higher levels of the agenda are. So many people down at levels of this, in different organizational structures, banking, business, military and police, politics, education, media, religious institutions, intelligence networks, secret societies, drugs, medicine, crime syndicates, anything, any way that people respond to people that are higher up above them and are institutionally structured, okay? People at lower levels of organizations such as these that are listed here will have no idea what the agenda is at higher levels. They're just doing their job, going along to get along, trying to make a living, trying to get by, trying to survive. However, some of the work that they're doing and involved in will be connected with this sinister agenda that I'm talking about in this part at higher levels. But because they don't have all the information that's collected at that high level, they don't know what they're involved in. Okay? The road to hell, so to speak, paved with good intentions. Well, if we don't know what we're involved in because our consciousness is limited and we can't see the bigger picture, we could be taking part in evil without even understanding it or recognizing it, that is the case. Who the controllers, the sorcerers, if you will, are occultists. They are master occultists. They understand human consciousness from levels of awareness that is much higher than most of the people of the earth. They understand what consciousness is. They understand how it works. They understand the physiological basis for it and how it works in our body. They have this knowledge. They've had it for thousands of years. So for them, it's like shooting fish in a barrel because they're controlling all the information, largely, that we get to see and hear, and they're keeping people in the dark about their true nature. They're keeping people in the dark about how their consciousness works. And therefore, people aren't armed against their influence and manipulation. Now, when I say the word occult, it will conjure images such as this in people's minds. Okay? We see it connotatively as a dark or negative or evil word. I don't want anyone leaving here today thinking that this word means something that is pure evil or negativity. That is not what all occultism is. All the word occult means, if you look at the word, I'm going to be talking a lot about meanings of words. You see the root, O-C-C-U-L, okay? Occult, right? Ocular, meaning related to the eye, or related to vision. All the word occult really means is hidden from sight. That's all it really means, hidden. It means it is difficult to see. Okay? So a deeper understanding, a deeper investigation is required if we're going to be able to understand what occultism is. But this is the force that is being perverted and used in a negative, harmful way, this type of information, to control people. Occult forces. A researcher, Judith Moriarty, said that the greatest conspiracies are not actually hidden. They're just fragmented into different pieces like a puzzle right before our eyes, hidden in plain sight. And the higher level occultists rejoice in this. They kind of get their jollies from keeping this information just at the edge of our vision, where we can see it but we don't really understand it, hidden in plain sight. Okay? Woodrow Wilson former president said, we have become one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the world. No longer a government of free opinion, no longer a government by conviction and vote of the majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of small groups of dominant men. You would think that someone at this level would understand what's really going on. Why would he make a statement like this if it were not actually true? Someone at the highest levels of government in this country saying this. Okay? Who the sorcerers of consciousness, the occult controllers, work through, and who many of them are, in fact, are members of globalist organizations. Organizations that want to create further and further centralization of power and more influence and control over the lives of all the people of the world. They're organizations that want to break down and ultimately do away with national sovereignty and personal sovereignty. They want everybody dependent, not independent. Okay? So centralization of power and groups that work toward this aim. Now, I am not going to give an overall interconnected tapestry of all the connections between these groups, all the secret society networks. I'm just going to name a few so you understand generally. The research is out there. Many, many researchers have done, written books, done documentaries on these groups. I could never exhaustively cover that in any single presentation. It's a lifetime of research, actually. But the United Nations is one of them, the G8 and now the G10 nations. You have organizations such as the Roundtable groups begun by Cecil Rhodes, the Council on Foreign Relations, it's kind of a government in the shadows in this country, the Royal Institute of International Affairs in Great Britain, the Bilderberger group, comprised of globalists from around the world, the Club of Rome, which is a high level, in my opinion, a eugenics operation, and very much involved in population control. The Trilateral Commission, and the Trilateral Commission is intricately involved in the current administration under Barack Obama and through his connections to people like Zbigniew Brzezinski and others. He has already appointed many Trilateral Commission representatives to his administration. We had the Project for the New American Century that called for a new Pearl Harbor to institute this greater American empire overseas. Okay? Groups such as these are who are really behind this agenda. World politicians are at somewhat lower levels, actually. They're actually doing the bidding. They're frontmen, puppets, if you will, of these globalist think tanks, and for the beings that are even above them in the hierarchical structure, namely the people that control the financial system, the monetary system, and the super elite global bankers. Okay? The military-industrial complex, strategists, generals, people involved in defense areas and covert intelligence networks, connected in with organized crime syndicates of every nature as well, and drug trafficking and many other activities. Globalist bankers, the Rothschild family, the bloodline-connected families that own and control the Federal Reserve banking system, the Rockefellers, others, many names. You can go on and on into the follow the money, so to speak, and understand how these globalist bankers really are the ones controlling these institutions and governments from behind the scenes. Royal families, who allegedly are figureheads, but actually wield an incredible amount of influence, particularly in Europe and in the Middle East. Religious icons, high-level religious leaders, the Vatican, evangelists involved in propagating this agenda to the people that follow them. New Age movement leaders as well.
I'm sorry.
Media representatives, media moguls as they're called, that are, their role is to tell the cover story to the public, keep the public actually uninformed about what's really going on. Different researchers have called this the movie version of reality. They're pumping out this version of reality that has nothing to do with what's actually taking place, to keep the people in kind of a hypnotized state and uninformed. Lower levels of governments, you know, parliaments, House of Representatives, Senates, judiciaries. Not all people involved in these are involved in this agenda, but they're well-positioned people at certain key positions of power will be involved and will be in the know, even in these structures. Theodore Roosevelt, former president, said behind the ostensible government sits enthroned an invisible government, owing no allegiance and acknowledging no responsibility to the people. Again, I ask, would you think that someone like this would understand? Why would a statement like this be made if this were not the case? This is a former president of the United States telling you that the people you think that run your government aren't the people that run it. There is an enthroned behind them, an invisible government that's really calling the shots. And the people that we allegedly vote into office are puppets that are just doing the bidding of this government, of this invisible government. Now, here's what really controls the dynamic from behind the scenes, okay? The mystery traditions of consciousness is who the occultists really, this is where they have really gotten their information, okay? They have pillaged and perverted this knowledge of human consciousness that was amassed, collected in the ancient past, and kept in a kind of covert way and doled out to people that were of interest, that sought out this knowledge. So they were keepers of sacred knowledge, these various mystery traditions throughout the world in ancient societies. But the modern incarnations of these mystery traditions have perverted them and have used them as a vehicle for controlling consciousness. Now, I put an image of a Freemasonic order here. In no way do I want anyone leaving here today thinking that I'm saying that it is all Freemasons, all Masonry, because that is not the case, certainly, okay? I'm giving an example of a secret society network that carries this mystical mystery tradition knowledge. This knowledge dates back into the ancient past, into ancient Egypt, ancient Babylon, ancient Sumer, and even before, okay? Right into the dawn of antiquity of man, okay? Hence the mystery traditions. That's why it is called that. This is the most ancient knowledge of how consciousness works. Okay? It's ancient psychology, if you will. You can look at it that way. So if someone has this knowledge, okay, they could use it for the benefit and the uplift of their fellow man, or they could use it for their own selfish egoic benefit and to try to manipulate and control others with it. Unfortunately, that is how it is being used for the most part in the world today, and why so few people understand these traditions and are using them for positive influence. Okay? That's what needs to happen. The occult and the mystery traditions need to be revealed so that people can begin to understand this information, understand themselves better, and they can become armed, have this knowledge as a source of defense against the type of manipulation that I'll be talking about. These secret society networks work, again, similarly to the pyramid we saw previously, in a hierarchical system and a pyramid-based system. Most people at lower levels of these types of covert networks do not understand agendas that are being run at higher levels of these step pyramids, symbolically. Okay? This is just an example in the structure of Freemasonry. You have the first 3 degrees, the Blue Lodge degrees as they're called. The entered apprentice, the fellow craft, and the master mason. The first 3 degrees are called the Blue Lodge degrees. Most people go no further than that, but there are many, many degrees higher than that in which you have less and less people until you get to the highest levels of the knowledge that is contained within the structure of a secret society such as Masonry. Phil Rockstro, a researcher, made this statement about the general structure of hierarchically based organizations. He said the authoritarianism inherent to this structure, talking about this pyramid structure, is antithetical to the concept of the rights and liberties of an individual. Most individuals bound by secrecy-prone hierarchical values will, over time, lose the ability to display free thinking, engage in civic discourse, and even be able to envisage the notion of freedom. This is what a hierarchically based structure does to the human consciousness if one gives it power, okay? If one gives over their sovereignty to authoritarianism. Okay? Corporations work in this structure. Every corporation is hierarchically structured, just like that pyramid structure of manipulation, just like a secret society network. You know, a bank could be given as an example. The people who run the bank and the agenda of the entire bank, they have all the knowledge of what the agenda of that institution is. Does it tell her? Of course not. They're just doing their job. They're compartmentalized at a much lower level of knowledge and awareness than the people who are really handling the large amounts of funds and directing the actual course of that institution. This is how all hierarchically based systems work, and these are the kind of ideas they all ultimately lead to. Again, the pyramid of manipulation, we see at the top level this capstone of the pyramid, so to speak, where all of the knowledge, all of them meet together. All of these different compartmentalized groups meet together at this group, where you have total information awareness and total knowledge of the agenda. Now, people have called that many different things. They've called that the Illuminati, those who are illuminated into knowledge. People have called that the prison warders, looking at this agenda of control as a prison society. And they've called many other names for it. I tend to look at it as just the hidden controllers, the hidden hand, the globalists, the sorcerers of consciousness is one that I particularly like. But to me, it's sort of irrelevant. The game is the same, no matter who's controlling it. And if we become aware of how it works, it's game over if we stand up for our sovereignty. Okay? Now, at the bottom, the people at the very bottom who are oppressed by this system, often without their knowledge, often without even really being aware of it, have an idea something's not quite right with the world. Okay? The people who you would think are the most oppressed are just the average individual, right? In my work, I have discovered there is a group of individuals that are actually even more suppressed than who we would consider as at the very bottom. Okay? A step up from that bottom level is actually the most suppressed, degraded, insulted, and physically damaged group of individuals. And this may upset some people, this may surprise some people, but here the next slide is going to show you who that group of individuals are. And many of them will not understand that. Many of them will not think this is actually the case. Okay? The most oppressed group of individuals on this planet are the controllers, the physical male dominator controllers involved in control-based organizations. Okay? Now, when I go through this entire presentation, in later parts in particular, you will understand just how much these people are mocked by the higher levels, the higher manipulators. As a matter of fact, you'll see that they cloak them in occult symbolism to mock them as well. These people have an illness, a physical illness that is provable physical brain imbalance, that modern brain scans can actually prove that these people's neocortexes are devastated. They're in a chronic state of imbalance, and neural network connections in controllers' brains are absolutely shut down in most places. And I know that could be of an insulting nature to some people, but if you study neuroscience and you understand how chronic brain imbalance works, you understand that these individuals are the most damaged and oppressed, and they need the most help. They don't need our hatred. They don't need us trying to, go out and hurt them even further. They might not understand that, but they need more help than the average individual. because the desire to control other people physically is an illness. And most people don't look at it that way, but that's what it is. It's manifested in physical, provable, structures in the brain. Physical, provable. You could do it with brain scan technology, and you can understand that the neocortex has become darkened in areas. I showed slides of these types of brain scans in part 1 of the presentation. And you could do that research online if you type in neuroscience, particularly if you look at some of the research of scientists that are really looking into this, like Daniel Amen or John Hagelin, or other ones whose names currently escape me. But you understand that control, when it comes to its highest manifestation in the physiology, ultimately damages the brain, and it puts people into the R complex of the brain, the base brain at the base of, at the top of the spine. That is the part of the brain that they're being ruled by. And as such, the higher order part of the brain, the higher order thinking part of the brain, the neocortex, is damaged and shut down. Now, I've said something about the bottom levels of this pyramid, but I haven't largely talked about the top level. And I'm not going to in this presentation. It's not going to focus on who is at the ultimate top level of the pyramid, because as I've said, it's ultimately irrelevant to me. The game is the same. But is the top level of a pyramid really the highest level? Is that the level that really controls the shots and controls the whole game? And I would say no, it is not. Because if you understand certain aspects of the mystery traditions, particularly the Egyptian mystery tradition, you understand there's always a hidden chamber. There's a hidden chamber in any pyramid that is of mystical design. The hidden chamber is where the game is really controlled from, not even the apex or the capstone, what's called the pyramidion of the pyramid. The hidden chamber is where the game is really played from. And there is now a device that has been invented that, if you look into this device, can show you who the top level controller in the middle chamber of the pyramid of manipulation and control and global dominance and global enslavement actually is. Okay? There's a device. You look into it, it will display to you who the ultimate hidden controller of the whole game is. And here is this device. Wow. That's who's controlling the whole game. That is the top level controller. We are controlling and ultimately enslaving ourselves by the way we think. That's what's really controlling the game. Look no further than that mirror before we go blaming anybody else, because that's who's responsible, first and foremost. Okay? We're looking at ourselves as powerless individuals, powerless numbers, just one of a series of billions. That there's no specialty, there's no uniqueness, you know, and we become hypnotized as a result. See, the way that these manipulators do their manipulation is they understand how physical reality and higher levels of reality that go beyond the physical are organized. Okay? The body level is probably the lowest in this structure. Okay? I look at it as the male aspect of creation. Okay? It's the yang principle, depicted by the upward pointing triangle, or the blade, as it was called in ancient civilizations and symbology systems. The top level, the highest level, the one that we really need to make a connection to if we're going to protect ourselves from this level of manipulation, is spirit. Okay? Spirit descends downward into matter so that matter can have an experience in the physical world. Okay? So I identified this with the inverted triangle, which is called the chalice, or the sacred feminine energy. And that was yin energy, as I described in part 1. But the realm that bridges the two, okay, that makes a connection between the body and the spiritual dimension, is the mind. So this is where spirit and body merge to become one. Okay? The mind is ultimately what has to be controlled if you're going to control someone's perceptions of reality and control their actions ultimately. These people who are doing this manipulation cannot physically dominate and control every living being on this planet. They require us to control ourselves by hacking into our minds, changing our perceptions of reality, and then we go along with their programmed ideas. So we're living out their ideas by proxy, okay? And that can only be done if the mind is controlled. And that, for the rest of the presentation, I'm going to go into an analysis of their techniques of mind control. All right? This is what I call the methods of manipulation. These are tools of the sorcerers, tools of sorcery. Okay? Other researchers have called this, most appropriately, the war on you. Because there's no war on poverty. There's no war on ignorance. There's no war on bad education. There's no war on homelessness. There's no war on terrorism. There's only a war on you. That's the only war that's really being waged, is the war against you and your consciousness, to shut it down and put it into fear so you are easily controlled. That's the only war being waged. Here's what the war on you looks like. It's based on the dynamic energy of fear. Without fear, this war cannot, that's the fuel for this war. Okay? It has multiple methods. It's a multi-faceted system of attack, and there's many more than this. I've picked 14 because in my understanding of numerology, occultic numerology, 14 is a very significant number. If you understand what that means in numerology, you will understand 14 is symbolic of the sorcerer. Okay? 77, a sorcerer's number. Okay? 14 is the addition of those two numbers. So I've picked 14 deliberately. Okay? Like I said, there are many more, but these are the ones I'm going to go over. I'm not going to get to them all tonight because part 3 are the last 2. I'm going to go through 12 of them this evening. Obfuscation, worldview poisoning, the exploitation of our primal fears, the divide and conquer method, indoctrination, or what we laughingly call education in this country, controlled opposition, the financial system, which is a huge one, the control of our mass media, our food and medicine, in quotations, the illusion of time, a bit of an abstract one, the denial, hassle, ridicule factor, what I call the DHR factor, okay? And religion, particularly religion as binding. And that will be the big one that I talk about today, and we'll end there. Okay, so let's go through them one at a time. Obfuscation looks like this. It is the presenting of masks. It is saying that something is one thing when it is in fact another, to pull someone off the trail. So obfuscation comes at us looking like this, an ornate, elaborate mask. It says, take this, accept this into your worldview, accept this into your consciousness, but here's what lurks beneath, which if you saw coming at you, you would want to go in the opposite direction. You would recognize it for what it is. So it has to dress itself up. It has to dress itself up so that you'll take it. Okay? It has to seem like a good idea, seem reasonable. Simplicity gets obfuscated with complexity. In part 1, we talked about that the truth is always simple. It's not complex. There may be different components to it, but each one is simple. They're like building blocks. They're like ABCs, okay? When we learn the alphabet, we learn them a little bit at a time, okay? Same with numbers. The truth is simple. The understanding of our consciousness is ultimately simple. Sorcerers, controllers want to throw tons of complexity at you so that you think you can never figure it out, so why bother even starting to try? Okay? Principles get obfuscated by law. Okay? Principle is based on when you take your actions because of your principles. You are taking that at a high level of consciousness because you yourself have recognized natural law, concepts of natural law. And when you recognize them, then you act in accordance with them of your own volition. Law is coercion by force, by dominator force. It's saying, here's what I am telling you you can or cannot do. If you do not do this, you will be met with force, violence, or the removal of your physical freedom. As such, law is based in fear, not natural law and not your own volition or freedom, because you yourself have recognized principles as applying, okay, and natural law being in effect. And that's the difference between these concepts, and that's why the dominators of the world are law-obsessed and constantly making ever tighter controlling legislation. Law ultimately is based upon fear of punishment. Okay? That's what gets obfuscated in place of the concept I talked about in part 1, dominion. Dominion is balance within an individual. An individual that has come to a higher level of awareness in thought, emotion, and action. And they are all acting in balance as one. Okay? That's a being that is in dominion. They rule the kingdom of self. They are in control of the only thing any of us are really allowed to be in control of. What we think, how we feel, and how we act in the world. That's all you have control of, and that's all anybody really has control of. Everything, every other form of control, external control, is an illusion. It does not actually exist. There are only claims of authority and those who recognize claims of authority. Okay? If you're taking an action because you fear the consequences of not taking that action, you are taking that action at the lowest level of consciousness that any action may be taken in. Fear. Specifically, fear of punishment by dominator controllers that will do something harmful to you. Okay? Gnosis is obfuscated with belief. Gnosis is knowledge acquired through the direct experience of something. Direct experience. Okay? Someone puts a pot on a stove and tells you it's hot, you have no gnosis of it. You have a belief. You can choose to believe them. The only way you're going to acquire gnosis is by touching the water or touching the pot. Then you will know. That's it. Okay? You don't have gnosis till you have acquired experience. Belief tries to obfuscate that. It says, accept this because it's been told to you, or other people in the past have accepted it, and you're part of that tradition, and so now you're required to accept it. That's what belief is, and that's what religion is based on, and that's what all institutionalized structures are based on, belief. All institutionalized structures. Individuality, which is really the highest expression of consciousness, understanding our own personal abilities and sovereignty, gets obfuscated with the culture. You're expected to behave in certain ways because that is the cultural way of things. That's how it's always been done and will always continue to be done that way. Okay? I love this story David Icke gives in one of his early books. He said that his mother would cut off the corners of a pot roast, okay, before putting it into the pan and throw away the corners of it. Like throw away like a tenth of the meat, right? And he was like, well, why did you do that? And she said, well, my mother always did it like that. And she's like, okay, does it make sense to do that? I don't understand that. And, well, it's just the way she did it, right? And they go and talk to David's grandmother, you know, this woman's mother. And they ask her, why did you do this? And she says, well, my pan was too small. You know? I just had a really small pan. I had to cut the corners on for it to fit. And this woman was doing the same thing, wasting food for no reason, no real reason other than she believed that's the way it was done. Well, that's what culture is. And as the late, great Terence McKenna phrased it, culture is not your friend, folks. It's your cult. The word conveys the actual meaning of the term. And we'll be talking about that. The meaning of words and the structure of words. Because the language conveys a great deal about what's going on. They will obfuscate outrightly truth with lies. I mean, this is an obvious one. They'll tell you black is white, you know, and hot is cold, and expect you to just buy it, you know. And many people do. They just look at authority figures as the be-all and end-all of knowledge, and people will not look into it themselves. So they can just outright lie, and people will buy it as the truth. And of course, just advocating the exact opposite. Something that is good for you, they will obfuscate and say it's evil, and something that is actually really bad for you, they'll try to push off onto you. That's the ultimate obfuscation. The next method is worldview poisoning. We talked about what worldview was in part one. The way we perceive our role in the world and the way we perceive others in the world. And a poisoned worldview looks at human nature as fundamentally flawed. We come into the world fundamentally flawed. We have an evil nature from right out of the womb. That is a poisoned worldview. It is largely conditioning that leads us into the negative ways of thinking and behaving in the world. It is not the nature of people. We're not born into the world originally flawed, original sin. Okay? This is a poisonous notion that has people believing that they're inherently bad. Okay? We're inherently good people that want to do the right thing. The vast majority of people are well-intentioned and want to do the right thing and are not psychopathic and not control freaks. Okay? This is what human nature really looks like. Okay? Given no conditioning present. Unfortunately, we're born into a world of conditioning. That's why people take on these psychopathic qualities. And that's why they're so in ego that they're willing to run somebody over in the street instead of allowing them to cross, or, you know, road rage, flying off the handle at the slightest little things. You know, the types of violence that we see. It's the conditioning and it's the buying of just outright wrong ideas. Accepting lies for truth. That's what really is creating it. It is not that is not human nature. The value of the individual is part of worldview poisoning. A poisoned worldview is one where somebody looks at themselves as a number. My value is carried by the amount of money I have in the bank, what kind of clothes I wear, what kind of car I drive, the status of what kind of job I have in society. That's a very poisonous way of looking at the value of a being. This is the value of a being. An infinite value. There can be no monetary unit or numerical value assigned to a being. It's impossible. An individual is of infinite value. Okay? So that's a positive worldview. The other part of worldview poisoning is they want you to believe that change is impossible. Forget it. It's always been this way. It is this way now, and it's always going to be this way. And you're powerless to affect change. Little powerless you. You're powerless to affect change. And that'll put somebody into the fear mode of consciousness, and they'll just shut down and say, oh, okay, I better just get back to what I was doing then, because I can't affect any change. Nonsense. Change is possible, and it's happening, and it's going to continue to happen, and it's not going to lay down, and the caterpillar can become a butterfly, ladies and gentlemen, and it will. Okay? If we will it into existence, yes, it can happen. Okay? The next method of sorcery, the method of manipulations, is preying upon our primal fears. This is a really deep-seated psychological one that many will not see. Well, we have four basic primal fears that go back into human antiquity. The fear of darkness, the fear of predators, the fear of abandonment, and the fear of chaos. These are all interconnected with each other. Okay? All interconnected. And here's how this interconnection works. In the ancient past, the greatest friend, the savior of the world, okay, the thing that gives us life, heat, warmth, energy, food, okay, and protection from predators during the day is the sun. the sun, light, okay? The male father figure is the other aspect of protection against predators, okay? So when the sun goes down and the male father figure may not be present, okay, chaos comes through these guys, the predators, okay? We're unprotected now because we don't have the light, we don't have the strong male figure, authoritarian father figure to protect us, okay? So we fall prey to the predators. And these are who the predators are in the modern world. High-level government officials, high-level bankers, the sorcerers of the world, so to speak. Okay? They're the actual predators now. They're the ones posing as the father figures to protect us from the predators. But in fact, they themselves are the predators that are seeking to prey upon us. See, the word predator is an interesting one. Look at what's encoded into that word. Predator. If we take the syllables, a predator is a predator, one who has come before, one who already has the knowledge and already has the awareness, because their information and their knowledge comes from the mystic tradition, the mystery traditions of consciousness. So a predator is using ancient knowledge against us. The next method is the divide and conquer technique, a favorite, okay? And one that unfortunately has been very successful. Even though we should be well beyond this point in consciousness, many of us still fall prey to this. Any way that you can get people to see themselves as separate or belonging to a group that others do not belong to, they will go to war with each other instead of understanding that they're really from attack from without. And so they try to divide us, okay, by our seeming differences. Sex, age, race, religion, social class, you know, how much money someone has, political views, okay, nationalities. These are all the ways that people see themselves as different from someone else. And when we start seeing ourselves as different, not in the same situation, not all part of one living family, okay, we're easier to control because we're fighting with each other instead of understanding who the real enemy is that's really trying to do us harm. And that's the divide and conquer technique. The next method is indoctrination. Indoctrination is accomplished by the left brain educational system that we have. Many people think that Western education is the epitome of education in the world, when in fact it is teaching a significantly imbalanced view of reality based on 5 sensory view of reality, okay? And this is largely due to putting people into the left brain chronically, okay? Now the left brain, when it's chronically engaged in, right, when we don't have a connectivity to things like creativity or music, art, things that bring out our intuition and our creative side, the sacred feminine aspect of consciousness, okay? The left brain takes over. Eventually the whole neocortex starts to lose its connection of neural pattern firing, okay? Global EEG coherence, it's called in neuroscience. This starts to break down. And then we go into the R complex of the brain, the reptile instinct, fight or flight response, stress. This leads to disease. This leads to brain imbalance that looks like this. And again, controller's brain looked like that brain there. This is a brain with better EEG coherence. Okay, that's a brain that both brain hemispheres are firing on all cylinders. Look at this brain. The neocortex has black patterns in it that represent neural firing deadness. There's no neural firing in those dark areas. It's been shut down. That person is not using their brain capacity to its extent whatsoever. And controllers' brains look like this, and sadly many of our young children's brains will now look like this because of the education that they're receiving. Okay? And look at in language again. The 3 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic. Right? All left brain ideas, and the R complex is the part of the brain that will eventually put you into. Reading, writing, arithmetic. 3 R's. Take you into the R complex. And that's why they want it. It gears you for work in the corporate structure. This is a political cartoon that shows you what chronic left brain imbalance can look like. There's no creativity, there's no fun, there's no being human. You're a faceless member of a cubicle world. Okay? And on the other side, if we make the connection to the right brain hemisphere, we can really, express our true creative side and really, have a higher appreciation for life. A symbol, an occultic symbol that is used in education is the black square. And I'll talk more about that in part 3. But the black square in occultism has traditionally been used as a sign of darkness, of not actually having the light. Okay, it's particularly seen in the occult tradition of Freemasonry. Okay, particularly on the floor of the house, as the Masons call it, the checkerboard floor that represents base consciousness, the checkered life of a man that wanders between light and dark, never really knowing which is which. A checkerboard pattern is also like a chessboard. Okay, so one who doesn't understand the pattern is a pawn in the game of chess that can be positioned however the chess master wishes to position them. And the black square in particular represents darkness, not having the light, not having true knowledge. And this is a mockery, in my opinion, occultically. This is a subtle mockery that one who has been educated and brought up in this left brain system has been indoctrinated without their actual understanding. And graduation really means a gradual indoctrination into a left brain poisoned worldview. And they're crowning it. They're putting the black square on the crown of the head, on the crown chakra, which is particularly viewed in occultic tradition as the highest seat of awareness in the brain, particularly because it is right on top of the human neocortex, the higher order thought function. And this is one of the ways that people who really don't carry light and are really indoctrinated into darkness are mocked. And I'll be showing examples of how police iconography also significantly mocks them, okay, later. Actually in part 3. The next method of manipulation in the war on you is the concept of controlled opposition. There are not 2 political parties in the United States, folks. There are not. There is one party, the party of centralization of power. Global fascism, global socialism, call it what you like. But the 2 parties are 2 wings of the same bird, and they're both flying to the same place. You go far enough to the left wing, you're in socialist land. You go far enough to the right wing, you're in fascist land, but they're all connected to that same evil bird. Okay? Vote all you want, the flight plan does not change. This is an illusion. And the left-right paradigm needs to be broken down and exposed for what it is. Okay? No clearer example of this than the 2004 presidential election between George Bush and Kerry. These 2 individuals were both members of an elite fraternal order of rogue masonry called the Skull and Bones Society out of Yale University. And the Skull and the Bones is another occultic symbol. And it's the symbol of the sorcerers. This is the organization where it's a breeding ground for sorcery. Okay? If you understand what they're connotatively telling someone with the skull and the bones, well, the skull is where the thoughts take place, right? And the bones are what we act with. right? That's how we put our will forward into the world through action. So if you have cleverness in mind, and you have the will to act upon that, what's missing here? Conscience, heart, feeling, emotion. Because they have none. They just have cleverness and the will to act. And that's a prescription for chaos. Okay? That's what that is. They have reached, this is why 77 is the sorcerer's number. 7 is a number of completion in numerological systems, okay? Of having attained ascension or perfection. And they have attained a level of higher awareness in thought, in understanding things, in having knowledge, and of their will to act. But they have not reached anything in feeling, in emotion. So they're the 77 out of the 3 sevens for thought, emotion, and action, symbolically, okay? That's why the skull and bones is their symbol. The New Age movement is the flip side of this controlled opposition paradigm. Okay, this is the opposite end of the spectrum. You know, you have the left side, the left part of the controlled opposition, the left brain that imbalances people toward the left brain hemisphere. The New Age movement is kind of a co-opted thing that can, if people go too deeply into some of the concepts that it contains. Now, it contains some good things and some truths, as does any set of views or beliefs. But the point being here is that if one goes too far into some of these New Age movement practices and ideologies, you can become chronically imbalanced the opposite way, toward the right brain hemisphere, where individuals will be engaged in, perpetual long hours of meditation and not caring about the physical world at all as a place where our vehicles have experiences for growth and higher levels of awareness. They'll just not care about anything in the physical. They'll just go into this spiritual stupor, the spiritual daze, And this is because the right brain imbalance leads to overactivity of the limbic brain. Okay? And the emotions can go haywire, and then the R complex shuts down. It's the exact opposite of how a controller is birthed into existence, right? A person that goes into that level of chronic imbalance toward the right brain hemisphere becomes somebody that's willing to lay down and be a slave. And they'll never stand up for their actual physical, worldly rights and existences. They'll just let someone run roughshod all over them. So that's the opposite danger of the controlled opposition paradigm. I look at a lot of people in the New Age movement as doing something like this. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. If it's anything dealing with negativity, don't talk to me about it. I don't want to talk about it because talking about it gives it power. Well, dwelling on it might give it power, but exposing it makes people steeled against this negative influence. Plus, we have to look at how we reflect these sorcerers in our own lives. We often want to become the controllers of others, okay? And we have to look at our shadow self. That's very critically important to this, okay? We don't pay attention to the shadow, it will devour us eventually, because it's a part of us, and it wants some level of respect and some level of working with it. We need to work with our dark sides, understand how they work. And that's the only way you ever transmute that kind of energy. Right? By working with it. You can't ignore it. So the financial system is probably one of the biggest methods of manipulation, and it's one that has a strong hold over all of our lives, and we're having a hard time breaking it. Meyer Amschel Rothschild, head of the Rothschild banking dynasty in I believe 19th century, made this statement: "Permit me to issue and control the money of a nation, and I care not who makes its laws." Because he understood that if you control the financial system, you control the government. Okay? The government is at the mercy of the money printers, the money masters, if you will. This is where the real seat of enthroned power that lies behind the governments actually lies, with the money masters and printers. we have a system in the United States of fiat currency. It's a fractional reserve banking system that is owned by private offshore banking institutions called the Federal Reserve System. And they issue fiat currency. Fiat currency, the word fiat is Latin. It means so be it. Let it be. Let it exist. Okay? It is currency issued by decree of those who print it. Okay? This means that this Federal Reserve System, which is a privately owned banking cartel, controls everything about the monetary system. Okay? It is not a governmental organization. There is no governmental oversight. It issues however much money it wants to put in circulation. It controls the interest rates on that money, and it can contract the circulation of currency whenever it deems. Therefore, it controls the entire game as far as money goes. It controls how much purchasing power that money has, how much it's worth. So it can inflate the value or deflate the value at any given time that it wants by how much money it prints or whether it retracts the amount in circulation. This system, because there is interest attached to this printing of money as well, is a perpetual cycle of ever-increasing debt. The debt never goes down. It's a steep increase that continues to go up and up and up, and it can never, that bubble can never be reversed, deflated. Okay? The debt goes only in one direction as a result of the way our fractional reserve currency system is set up. These are just basics, you know. There are many people in financial institutions that do not understand how this dynamic works because they're so focused on the minutia of the little aspect that they're involved in that they don't even know what fiat currency is or how our fractional reserve banking system works at all. You don't need to know all the off on that tangent. What we have to understand is that we are consuming all of this negative energy into our food and putting it into our body, and we are what we eat. This is becoming us. These fuels that we put into our body carry a certain energy vibration, and then we're putting it into our physiology, and it's making up our brain. Of course, this is why consciousness is so imbalanced as it is. We're not putting the proper fuels in our body. And that affects the brain, it affects how we think, it affects the emotions, how we feel, and it affects how our judgment, how we act in the world. And this is why you see people who are completely out of control in the world and don't know what's going on within them and their emotions. They don't know how to act, you know, just immoral behavior. The flip side of the food and medicine is drugs, pharmaceuticals, and unnecessary surgery. This is what these corporate entities want to sell you on. That's their product for you. The Western medical system doesn't want health. It gauges success by how many patients it's treating. Why wouldn't it be gauging success of how many patients it's not treating, right? Because they're already healthy. The answer is to put a patch on everything, right? Don't treat the symptom, treat the wound. Okay? I'm sorry, don't treat the cause, treat the symptom or the wound, right? Don't get to the underlying cause, right? You want to just keep bandaging it so you have people dependent on your product or service. That's what the goal is here. Vaccines are a part of this, often a very poisonous cocktail of chemicals that often many of us don't even know what's in them, and we're putting them into our children's body at an age when their brains are developing. Vaccines are extremely harmful and should be really judged with scrutiny. And what I term the demon drugs. The most harmful substance, in my opinion, in the modern world are the antidepressant drugs, the SSRIs, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, because they're doing something that is completely sinister. They are numbing our emotional compass, okay? Our compass for moral direction are our emotions, and they're numbing them out of us. Why? So that we'll continue to ignore them and keep doing things that we really know at a subconscious and an intuitive level are morally wrong, okay, and are really harmful to ourselves and others. But if we numb out our emotions, this is the modern soma from Brave New World, if you've ever read Huxley's work. Okay? The modern soma are the SSRI medications. And millions of prescriptions for these drugs are written every year in this country. Because people are intuitively know that they're living incorrectly in the world. They're not living in any way that's really truly morally uplifting. They know that they have this sense of powerlessness in their lives, and they're looking to numb it out in whatever way they can. And this is the preferred method by the pharmaceutical industry. The demon drugs, I call it. The illusion of time. Okay? This is kind of a heady conceptual one, but it's very critical. There is really no such thing as time. There's only the present moment. There's only the now. That's really all that exists, and it's ever flowing. This is why it's called the present. The now is a gift. In every moment you have been gifted an opportunity to change or to stay the same. Okay? And every past moment of now is gone, so you can never change the past. You can change the future, but that takes place in the now by the decision. Now, okay? The future has not arrived yet, and the past is gone. There's no point in living in either one of those two states because you're taking yourself out of the present moment. One of the methods that is used is getting people to see time as a repeating cyclical idea of non-breaking change. The same thing happening over and over. This is best accomplished through things like the Gregorian calendar based on astronomical cycles of movements of heavenly bodies that just repeat endlessly, okay? So that gets people to look at time as a physical thing. When we look at time not as a gift or a present, right, but as a physical thing, we then get the notion of time is money. I don't have enough time to do this or that. I will spend time on this. It's a currency, right? There's a couple of spiritual currencies I like to look at them as. You know, money's a physical currency, but two spiritual currencies are time and attention. What we spend our time doing and what we pay attention to. That's the currencies of true knowledge and the unfolding of spirit. These are the higher level currencies. They're trying to get us to identify time with a lower level of currency, a base currency. Okay? This is brilliantly depicted. The idea of the present moment is brilliantly depicted in this painting of the Gnostic crucifixion. Okay? Jesus is the present moment in this image. Okay? He's the light of the world, the Savior. Right? He is crucified on Golgotha, the place of the skull, right? Representing the mind. Between the two thieves, right? The thieves are the past and the future. And he is the present moment, the light of the world. You know, being in the present moment is a higher level of awareness. Existing in the past is thieving from the present moment. Existing in the future is thieving from the present moment. You know, existing in those two states of time are detracting from consciousness. We need to be rooted in the now. Okay? The DHR factor is the last one before I get to religion, which will wrap up this second part. But the DHR factor stands for denial, hassle, ridicule. This is a huge one. Most people are doing this. Okay? They have their head in the sand. They're in psychological denial of our current condition globally. Okay? This is also known in psychological circles as the condition known as cognitive dissonance. It means that people hold one way of looking at reality in their mind while they perceive the way that it really is out in the physical world around them, and often even within themselves, a completely different way. They're seeing the evidence of how things really are with their own eyes, and yet in their mind they're saying, I refuse to believe that that is how it is. I'm still going to hold on to this notion that this is in fact reality, as I say that it is. Okay? And I am not going to accept that this is what is actually going on. Cognitive dissonance. I like to refer to this condition as people believe that they are their own personal arbiters of truth, right? I can declare how truth is, and then it will be that way. So if I'm uncomfortable with it, or it doesn't meet up with my likes or tastes, I can just say, it isn't that way. Okay? I'm the arbiter of truth, after all, right? Many people are in this psychological denial condition. And that's playing God, folks. You're playing God by saying, it isn't the truth, that isn't the truth. I'm going to see the results of this with my own eyes, but still refuse to accept that that's how it is. That's what denial really is about. And ultimately, it's the denial of reality, the denial of truth. That, again, we saw that's what really creates all of our suffering. The hassle factor, people don't want to speak up about this because they're afraid. They're in a vibrational fear of controllers. So they don't want to, they just go along to get along. I'll just continue to do what I'm told so I don't raise any eyebrows. I don't look at the nail that sticks up above the other so it gets hammered down first, okay? I don't want to deal with the hassle that goes along with it. I'll just continue to do things that I know are really morally wrong, even though, you know, they're bad for me spiritually, they're bad for me mentally, they're bad for me physically, but I want to be in the hassle-free zone. Many people are stuck in that trap. And the ridicule factor. And this is the first time I've presented this slide. I want to say thank you to my friend Ned for posing for this picture. But
it's a natural.
Yeah, you don't want to be perceived as the man in the tinfoil hat by talking about concepts that most other people are just being silent about. Okay? We fear ridicule. We fear what others will think of us. Instead of being true to ourselves, being true to our conscience, and speaking our truth, regardless of who agrees with it or not. Okay? And we've got to get out of the ridicule factor and start speaking this more. The universe is spoken into existence. Right? God spoke, "Let there be light," a vibration. And the people who are making this world a hell to be in, they're speaking it into existence. We need to speak it into existence to reverse the trend. The universe is spoken into existence. We don't speak up, we're going to go down together. Okay? So ridicule has to be pushed to the side, and we have to get out of that fear vibration and start speaking the truth. Now, the last factor of manipulation, the last methodology of the war on you is religion. And all religion is really something in disguise, as I'm going to talk about. It is a disguise for something. It's kind of a cover story, if you will. This is not to say that there are no good ideas in religions. Okay? I'm not going to advocate throw it all out and do not take any of the good things that are taught in religions, okay, and move forward with them. But as a belief system, religions are pulling the wool over a lot of people's eyes, and they don't understand what they're really looking into and what they're really, quote-unquote, worshiping. Okay? So I'm going to talk about one religion in particular tonight, and that's going to be Christianity. But I'll go through a couple of quotes and a couple of conceptual ideas before I get into that story. Thomas Paine, who is one of my greatest philosophical influences, I always say this at my lectures, I think in the colonial days and in the time of the American Revolution, I think he was probably the highest consciousness philosopher that was walking in this land at that time. He made this statement about religion. I think he understood what real personal sovereignty was. Okay? You read his writings and you could see the consciousness of the man shining through them. So he's one of the individuals I respect above all else when it comes to philosophy, particularly Western ideas and American philosophy. I do not believe in the creed professed by the Jewish church, by the Roman church, by the Greek church, by the Turkish church, by the Protestant church, nor by any church that I know of. My own mind is my own church. All national institutions of churches, whether Jewish, Christian, or Turkish, appear to me no other than human inventions, set up to terrify and enslave mankind and monopolize power and profit. And that's what most modern churches really are doing. When we look at the word religion, it comes from the Latin. It comes from a Latin verb, religare. Now, there's debate about this because some people think that this word means to reconnect. The word religare means to bind by tying. It means to hold back, okay? To hold something back, to bind it, to tie it up. That's what religare means in Latin, and that is where the word religion comes from in the Latin. It's a binding. Now, what is a binding? In occultism, well, here's the proof that the word religare, in fact, means binding. Okay, I type it into a Latin dictionary. Religo, religare, to tie out of the way, to bind fast, to moor. Okay, so there is the proof that is what it means, because many people will debate that etymology. Religion is binding, but what is binding? What is binding occultically? In occultism, what does binding mean? Binding is a magical or occultic term descriptive of a class of spells, okay, or words. See, spells, use of words, right, to get into the subconscious, intended to thwart or hold back by tying, a binding, right, the progress of an opposing force or practitioner. That's what a magical binding is. So what is it holding us back from? What is it tying us from reaching? What is it thwarting our progress toward getting to? Right? Well, what religion is really thwarting our progress toward getting to is the truth. Okay? This is what I call the bullseye of truth. Okay? The dartboard of truth. Okay? At the center of the bullseye, the center of the mandala, if you will, is the truth. It's unwavering. It's what is. It's simply how things are. It's natural law. Okay? Around that, you have the esoteric mystery traditions, meaning the inner circle. The esoteric means the initiated. Those who understand the initiatory traditions. Those who have been brought in to the knowledge a bit. Okay? The outer circle is where the religions really are. That's the exoteric, or the cover story for the inner traditions. Now, when I go into the explanation of Christianity, you will understand that beneath the exoteric cover story, there is such a richer tradition that it has to do with consciousness. I'm not knocking the true Christian religion. I'm going to expose the exoteric Christian religion and hopefully get people to look into the esoteric one, true Christian tradition, okay, that has a much richer message of consciousness in it than what a lot of people are being shown in Roman churches, okay? So, all religion is ultimately astro-theology. This term means the worship of astronomical bodies. Looking at bodies of astronomy as gods, because they are in the heavens. That's what astrotheology at its basis is. All right, now there are three different sects, so to speak. There's three different variants of astrotheology, because there are three different types of lights or planetary astronomical bodies in the heavens. And what are they? You have the small pinpoints of light, right? What we see as the stars and the planets in the sky. They're the lesser lights, the little pinpoints of lights that we see with our eyes in the night sky. And then, of course, you have the two greater lights of the heavens, the sun and the moon. So, these are the three sects of astrotheology. The cult of the sun, the cult of the moon, and the cult of the stars and the planets, the lesser lights. We will see that each major world religion, namely Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, are given, one each are given to one of the three sects of astrotheology. One is the religion of the sun, one is the religion of the moon, and one is the religion of the stars and planets. And I'm going to, since my background in my life comes from Christianity, I was born into a Christian family, I've chosen to present the story, the esoteric story of Christianity, because it is the background that I was raised in. So I could equally do this for Judaism or for Islam, but since I believe the story of Christianity most relevantly illustrates the story of astrotheology, and that's why I've chosen to cover it. I'm going to relate Christianity to a former tradition, a former mystery tradition, a former cosmology. And it is the Egyptian cosmology. The story of the Egyptian Trinity, and particularly the story of the Egyptian sun god, the sun savior. They had a savior hero that was depicted by the sun, the solar disk, okay? And his name was Horus, H-O-R-U-S, Horus. Horus was the sun. He was depicted as a golden falcon. He comes up each day over the zone of Horus. He is born on the zone of Horus. We call this the Horus zone, the horizon. Okay? So he rises above the zone of Horus, and he makes his trek, his journey across the sky as a golden bird. Okay? This is a symbolic way of seeing the sun. They did not really think, ancient Egyptians did not really think the sun was a golden bird. This is a symbol. We have to now switch our minds into symbolic thinking mode, okay? So Horus, the golden falcon, the sun god. He has a mother, a father, and a brother in Egyptian cosmology. Okay? His mother was named Isis, I-S-I-S, Isis. She is the lunar goddess, the moon goddess. She is also depicted symbolically as the goddess of the night sky. So she is the cloak of darkness that the night sky is. Not just the moon, she is the entire night sky. Okay? She's the moon, and she is the night sky with all of the stars embedded in it. That's what Isis is. Okay? She gives birth to Horus because the night sky gives birth to the rising sun each morning. It bears the child, the sun god Horus, on the horizon each morning. Horus also had a father. He is depicted here in the middle in this statue of three beings. This is the father god of the Egyptian cosmology of the Trinity. Okay? This is Osiris. Osiris is the higher father god that creates the heavens and creates the sun and planets, etc. So he's the father god who is Horus's father, and he is the wife of Isis. Here you see depicted on both sides of Osiris, Horus, the golden falcon. Now if you place yourself as Osiris, you notice that the golden falcon that depicts the rising sun, right, is touching his right side of his brain, the right side of Osiris's head. Right? He has his hand on the right side of the head. This depicts that if we are, symbolically depicts, that if we are in touch with the right brain, the spiritual or sacred feminine side of ourselves, the light is rising. Okay? The light is coming on. We're connected to higher levels of awareness. You see how the Egyptians understood consciousness? The Alchemician tradition, they understood that these are symbols. They didn't really look at them as gods in the sky. These were symbols for what's going on inside of us in our own consciousness. Now, Horus had a brother. He had a dark brother, a brother who was the antithesis of light. He was the god of darkness. He killed the light of Horus at the end of each day. His name was Set. This is where we get the term sunset from. Because when he's on the opposite horizon in the west, the light's going out and the sun is setting into the underworld. So Set would conquer Horus at the end of each day and banish him to the underworld. He would go into the underworld, rise up again the next day to perpetually give eternal life to the earth through its light, through its heat, through its energy. Is this starting to somewhat now begin to make sense? And the moon goddess Isis, the goddess of the moon and the waters, would bear the sun each day. Okay? And she was the wife of the father god Osiris, the sacred feminine aspect. So we see Set here touching Osiris on the left side of the brain. This is chronic left brain imbalance leads to darkness, leads to ignorance and darkness and chaos in the world and the putting out of the light. Okay, so this is a very powerful allegorical symbol here. Isis depicts the conscience, the heart, the emotional content, okay, or the limbic brain, if you will, that if we're in connection with it, bears the child of light, bears the savior of the world. Okay? Horus, the rising sun. Here we see all three of the aspects of consciousness depicted in this statue, and we see how they're all connected. Osiris represents the creator God, our thoughts. He has the two hemispheres on his headdress, like the brain has two hemispheres, right? He is our thoughts, that which gives birth to higher levels of awareness, and it's the basis, it's the pillar upon which everything else rests. How we think creates our external reality. Then here we see, to the right, Isis. This is our emotional makeup, the sacred feminine aspect of ourselves, how we feel, our conscience, the mother, the divine mother, the sacred feminine, that has now been removed from the modern trinity of Christianity. It's now the Holy Spirit, or the Holy Ghost. It's been ghosted from the Trinity. It's been removed symbolically and replaced by the Holy Spirit, or a dove symbol, which we'll see is connected with Isis, because she was the dove of the heavens. In her crescent aspect, right? The moon can be, just like Horus can be seen as a golden falcon, she's seen as a white dove that traverses the sky in her crescent aspect. And we see Horus here to the left, which represents the male pillar, the male principle, and that's taking proper, upright, moral action in the world. A being that has light takes proper action. So we see thought, emotion, and action depicted symbolically in this cosmological tradition. Now we're going to start to see the similarities to Christianity, if you haven't already. Okay? We see Isis bearing the child Horus. We see Madonna and child in this image. Okay? The moon goddess gives birth through the spirit of the Father God to the Son. Okay? And it's a virgin birth because if you look at the R complex of the brain as a law-obsessed dominator figure, right? Like an Old Testament Father God obsessed with law and obsessed with control, right? And you see the limbic brain as being the mother part of the brain structure. When we're in touch with the limbic brain, right, the father complex, the R complex, begins to die away, right, and not hold as much influence over us, and then the child is born from the mother who has no husband, so to speak, who has no male counterpart, because the R complex has been conquered. So it's a virgin birth. See, the father has died. In Freemasonry, this is called the widow's son being born. Right? Proper moral action. The widow's son born from the mother who no longer has a husband, because the R complex is that husband who has died. We're going to see how that connects in with that tradition later. Look at every one of these images depicting the Blessed Mother Mary and the child Jesus. We see she is illuminated with light because the moon reflects the illumination of the sun. She is crowned in all of these examples because she is the queen of the heavens at night. And in every example, she has a dark cloak of the night sky in which the stars of night are embedded in the cloak, in every example. Okay? Because this is the lunar mother of the night sky and the moon that gives birth to the solar child, the sun, Jesus, Horus. It's a solar god. Now see, what it really represents, we're not really being told. It's not something out there, right? It's something in here. This is proper moral action being born of a connection to the sacred feminine aspect of our consciousness, or our conscience. Okay, that's what it really represents. I mean, look, in this example, you even see the crescent moon, you know, and Horus being born in every example, Jesus being born from the mother of the night sky. And here, the Immaculate Heart of Jesus, out from her cloak of the night. So it isn't dismissive of the whole concept of a Savior, because the Savior has to be our consciousness being raised, our neocortex being healed and coming together as one, and proper moral action being born into the world. That's the true Savior of the world. All right? Now, to understand the story of the sun and how it really is the astro-theological story of Christianity, we have to just briefly outline two concepts in astronomy, very simply. This is what creates the seasons and what creates what's called the Platonic year or the great year, the galactic season, so to speak. Our seasons on Earth are created by one and only one thing. The angle that the Earth is tilted with respect to the plane of orbit. That's it. Nothing else. Has nothing to do with how far or close the Earth is from the sun. It doesn't really, it's not a very elliptical orbit, the Earth. It's generally a circular orbit around our star. The seasons are created by the 23.5 degree tilt of the Earth, of the axis of rotation of the Earth, with respect to the orbital path around the sun. Okay? So, we see when it's tilted away from the Earth, here, that's our winter season. That's the winter solstice. It is tilted away. The northern hemisphere is tilted away from our star. Then, when we have the equinoxes, there is no tilt in relation to the sun. It's tilted this way, but that means that here's the equator of the Earth. It forms a 0 degree angle with respect to the equator. So neither the north or the south hemisphere are favored at that time of the year. So the sun is at a 0 degree angle with respect to the equator. When the Earth is in this position, the northern hemisphere is tilted toward the sun. So it receives more direct sunlight in the northern hemisphere than in the southern hemisphere. And this would be the beginning of the summer season in the northern hemisphere, the summer solstice. So, the second concept is what creates the galactic year, or the great year, the Platonic year. This is known as the precession of the equinoxes. There is a reference frame of motion, which I'm not going to get deep into. Just understand there is a reference frame of motion, another frame of motion that causes a perceptual rotation of the pole of the Earth in relation to what stars it is pointing to. So this slow circular motion of the Earth's pole, right, goes counterclockwise through the zodiacal houses, the houses of the zodiac, the houses that the sun appears to rise in during the course of a year on Earth. Okay? And this motion, this precessional motion of the pole of the Earth, to make one complete revolution, takes approximately 25,000 some odd years, okay, around the 25,000 year mark. A very slow perceptual motion. So for one degree of motion through this 360 degree circle, we're talking about the equivalent of about 70 to 72 years. So it's very, very slow, and to recognize this motion, ancient astronomers would have had to track the movement of these star patterns over thousands of years. Okay? So that will only play into one aspect of this story, but it's a very interesting thing to note and to study on your own if you're going to look into astro-theology. I'm going to briefly tell, as briefly as I can, tell the story of the sun's path on the zodiac. Okay? So the ancients looked at, they formed this pattern, the zodiac wheel, which we all talk about when we look up our horoscopes in a newspaper or whatever. And there are 12 houses that the sun travels through, or 12 constellations in the band that the sun, the orbital band that the sun makes around the Earth. Relationally. You can look at, if you fixed the Earth, it would appear at fixed the reference frame of motion of the Earth and held it fixed, it would appear as the sun is going around it. So at different times of the year, if you look behind the sun would appear to be in a different constellation. Okay, that's all these houses represent. Okay, they're constellations of stars. The ancients drew the zodiac into 12 different houses, with each house taking up 30 degrees of the circle, and then they would quarter this. They would put a cross on this zodiac, divided into 4, because there are 4 general seasons of the year. According to the motion of the Earth around the sun and its tilt. And they would then track the progress of the sun through these 4 seasons. So they would place the sun upon this cross, this quartered zodiac cross, and then they formulated a symbolic story about the path of the sun on the zodiac. Horus, or the sun, would begin at the spring equinox. Now, right now, in the precession of the equinoxes, the sun is rising in Pisces. So, on this zodiacal depiction, the spring equinox is actually at the Pisces-Aries line. Okay? So, Aries would be the first house of the zodiac according to our sidereal zodiac year. Okay? And this is the season of spring, because the sun is at 0 degrees with respect to the equator of Earth, and it's rising into the northern hemisphere. Hence, it's springing up in its power, symbolically. Okay? When it hits the midpoint of spring, it is at Taurus. Taurus is a bull. The sun is gaining strength. It's rising in power and heat and warmth. Okay? So, the sun has become a charging bull in the season of spring, until he reaches his highest point of power in the northern hemisphere. This is the 23.5 degree northern latitude of Earth, also known as the Tropic of Cancer. Okay? This is the highest the sun is going to go into, as far as an angle goes, up into the northern hemisphere, above the equator of the Earth during the course of the year. And look, we see that he is now at the house of Cancer during this time of the year. That's why the Tropic of Cancer is named as such. Okay? This is the summer solstice, June 21st. All right? Now, the sun's now going into the summer season. In Leo, the midpoint of summer, the sun has become a roaring lion with a great mane of flame. Okay? That's around August. Okay? He's now at his highest point of power in the summer season. Now, when he comes to the autumn equinox, the parallels to the Christian exoteric tradition, okay, start to become evident at that time of the year. This is the point where he's now at the 0 degree point with respect to the equator again, but now falling in power. He's going into the southern hemisphere, right? Hence the term fall. The sun is beginning to fall in strength at this time, and we have the autumn or fall season. Now, at the midpoint, I'm going to explain one other thing. When he is at this line, right, on the Virgo-Libra line of the autumn equinox, if you look at a celestial globe and you look at Virgo, when the sun is in the house of Virgo, if you look below Virgo in the southern hemisphere on a celestial globe, there is a constellation there's a constellation underneath Virgo. The sun is said to be at this time of the year atop this constellation. Here's what this constellation looks like. It is underneath Virgo. So when the sun is around the autumn equinox, beginning to fall into the southern hemisphere, he's above, positioned above the constellation Crux. C-R-U-X, a Latin word that means cross. Okay? So this is the constellation known as the Southern Cross. It is visible only from the southern hemisphere. The ancient astronomers would mark this time of the year when the sun was above or on top of Crux, on the cross, as the time when he would begin to lose his strength and begin to die. Okay, so the sun was said in the ancient astronomical systems to be on the cross at this time of the year, the autumn equinox, because he is positioned above Crux, the southern cross. So now at the midpoint of the fall season, the sun reaches Scorpio the scorpion. Here he has been bitten or stung by the venom of that creature, the scorpion. And now he's really in rapid decline. He's getting ready to die. The sun then dies on the cross of the zodiac, okay, at the winter solstice, the lowest point of his power. So the sun now dies upon the cross. He was put upon the cross at this place on the zodiac, okay, the autumn equinox, and he dies on the cross after 3 zodiacal houses, or symbolically 3 hours. We're told in the Christian tradition that Jesus hanged upon the cross for 3 hours before expiring. And symbolically, this is because these are divisions of the zodiac. They're symbolically hours in this example. We're going to see how they are also symbolically days and months in other examples. Okay? So the winter solstice, December the 22nd, the sun has reached his lowest point. He is at 23.5 degrees south latitude, okay, below the equator, and that's called the Tropic of Capricorn because the sun is getting ready to enter the house of Capricorn.
What about Aquarius?
Now, after Aquarius is the midpoint of the winter season, okay? So he's rising in power there, going back toward the northern hemisphere, and it's bringing the thaw. It's bringing the thaw of winters, hence the water bringer symbology there. But if we look at the birth of the sun, why do we celebrate the birth of the sun when we do? We celebrate the birth of the sun on the day that the sun can be seen to be visually coming back northward, toward the northern hemisphere. And with the naked eye, a degree of arc in the sky is able to be visually perceived approximately 3 days after the winter solstice. The movement of the sun back northward from its lowest point in the southerly direction is visually able to be perceived approximately 3 days after the winter solstice. The winter solstice is December the 22nd. 3 days after that point is December the 25th. So that is why December the 25th is Christmas Day, or the birth of the Son of God. And because the sun is now visually able to be perceived as being born again after it has lived and died, and it is now going to be rising from his tomb of the southern hemisphere. These are the days of the year he's in the northern hemisphere. These are the days he's in the underworld, or the tomb of the southern hemisphere. So now he is coming out from his tomb, going toward the spring equinox again. And the ancient Egyptians encoded this progress of the year. See, at a very much more ancient time, the spring equinox was in the line between Leo and Virgo. The beginning of the solar year would have been celebrated at this line, not where it's at now in the house of Pisces. So the zodiacal year would have begun in Virgo, the Virgin, and that is the head of this zodiac in stone, known as the Sphinx, at the Giza Plateau. The end of the zodiac would have been Leo, and that is why the Sphinx has the body of a lion. It has the head of a woman, Virgo, okay, the constellation Virgo, where their zodiac would begin, and their zodiac would end in Leo. So the Sphinx is a zodiacal symbol about the path of the sun through the constellations. Now, if we look at the date that the sun now rises back into the northern hemisphere, we call that Easter Sunday, right? Now, look at Easter Sunday, when the sun is risen. He has risen from his tomb in the southern hemisphere. Look at the word Easter, east star. The sun is an eastern star, a star that rises in the east. And we're celebrating it on Sunday, the day of worship of Christianity. Sunday, named after the sun. All concepts equated to the sun. East, star, sun, and day, when the sun is up. Okay? If there is any doubt that this is the basis of the story of Christianity. Not the true wisdom tradition that's carried in Christianity, in real Christianity, in esoteric Christianity. Okay? If there's any doubt that this is the astro-theological basis for this religion, every one of these names is the name of an ancient solar savior hero, okay, that has special powers, has 12 helpers, rises from the dead after being dead for 3 days, is crucified on a cross, redeems the world, is born of a virgin, the Father is the Father of the heavens. Every one of those names, at least 40 that are easily discoverable or researchable, probably more. Every one of those names you just saw predates Christianity, often by thousands of years. There is not one that is newer than Christianity. Every one of those names of those Savior heroes all predate the religion that we attribute to Jesus. Now, this is not to in any way invalidate the teachings of the message of the man we call Jesus. I don't want people to look at it as don't study his words, don't study those conceptual ideas, because what he was really showing us, in my opinion, was how to resist tyranny. He was showing us how to refuse to capitulate to evil in the world and to really act morally, as far as I'm concerned. So study his words, look into his words. If you're not understanding that the religion that the churches are putting forward are astro-theology, and this is a pagan sun worship religion, and they're telling you the exoteric cover story and not really getting at the modality of consciousness that this true religion was about, this true ideology was about, you're missing the point altogether, and you're being deceived by religion. Now, there are some creative masters that understood this principle, like Leonardo da Vinci. And here's the real Da Vinci Code for people that have looked into some of the stories going around about him. But this is the real hidden code in some of Da Vinci's work. He depicted Jesus as the sun here, and you have the helpers of the sun, or the zodiacal houses, the 12 around him, right? And they are broken into groups of 3, the seasons, okay? You have a light time of the year here. That's the time of the year when the sun is in the northern hemisphere, okay? So you would have, that would be spring and summer here on the light side, and this would be the dark time of the year when the sun is in the southern hemisphere. That would be fall and winter. Okay, you have a light half and a dark half. But there is quarrel going on at the table. It's chaos in the room, and he's symbolically depicting that the way out is through light, is through knowledge, is through the awakening process of consciousness. Indeed, this is the light of the world, the Savior of the world. See? But he's showing people that it's about the balance between the male and female, or the left brain and the right brain. And that activates the prefrontal neocortex at the level of the pineal gland and opens up the third eye, the eye that sees everything. Okay? You could see the entire picture, the entire pattern. Okay? And meaning and purpose is revealed at that point. And that's the way out of the world of chaos. Da Vinci understood it perfectly, probably because he had an activated neocortex and pineal gland. Anyone that could paint at that level, I believe, probably did, and paint these kind of conceptual ideas at that level. We see that the bodies of astro-theology, the gods, so to speak, are the planets that are visible with the naked eye. The sun, Mercury, Venus, the moon, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Beyond Saturn, you cannot see with the naked eye. So these are the planetary bodies visible from Earth that are the gods of astro-theology. And we're going to see how they are attributed through our time system. Time is connected with astro-theology, again. In English, these are the days of the week. Every one of the days of the week are given to one of the gods of astro-theology. Here are the names in French, because some of the correspondences, the phonetic correspondences, work better with the French language. These are the planetary bodies, or the gods, that the days of the week are given to. Monday is an easy one. Moon Day, Monday, right? It's the moon. Tuesday, if we go to the French language, this is mardi. Mardi Gras, right? Tuesday, Fat Tuesday. This is Mars, the god of war's day. And incidentally, 9/11/2001 was a Tuesday, because it was an invocation to the god of war. Wednesday is Mercredi in French, Mercury's day. Thursday, Jeudi in French, it's Jupiter's day. Thor's day in the Norse tradition, who is associated with Jupiter. Friday, Vendredi in French, that's Venus's day. And Saturday and Sunday are pretty self-explanatory. Saturn's day, and of course, as we've already seen, Sunday. The Saturnian religion, its day of worship is on Saturday, is Judaism. And Islam celebrates on Friday with a feminine symbol of Venus, and the moon is also connected with that. It is the moon's religion, Islam. Time is encoded into our clock zodiacally. This is why the clock is broken down into 12 houses, into 12 divisions. And we see each one of the hands given to one of the gods of Astro-Theology, one of the cults or sects, if you will. We have the solar sect, the lunar sect, and the planetary and stellar sect. Okay? The hour hand, Horus's hand, it measures the largest divisions. It's the sun. Okay, the hand given to the sun. The minute hand, min, is an ancient word for the moon. Okay, so the minute hand is given to the moon. It measures the second largest. So we have the year, the month, right? And then we measure the day, or the minutes, by the second hand, okay? Second, Mercury is the second planetary body visible by the naked eye from the center of our solar system, the sun, which is the primary object. So the second hand, Mercury, has the fastest orbital period of any planet. And so does the second hand that goes around the clock, moves faster than any of the hands. And we can see that the basis of time is Astro-Theology. This is going to be the last section, but probably the headiest section to wrap your mind around. I want to help people understand that these religions relate to a global thing, a global symbolic concept, the earth brain. Okay? The entire planet is one living consciousness. There is no separation. There's only one consciousness here. And our division according to religion has illustrated the dichotomy that we're experiencing in consciousness. Because this earth is one living brain. Okay? If you look at the earth as a brain, as a neocortex of a brain, right? You have a leftern or western hemisphere, just like you have a left hemisphere inside your skull, okay, in the brain. The eastern hemisphere could be visualized as the right hemisphere of the brain, okay? So you have religions that are set up on the planet. Now, we saw that this is the yang or masculine side of the brain associated with solar energy. This is the yin or feminine side of the brain, the right brain hemisphere, associated with lunar or feminine energies. Okay? We see that the religion of the sun is based upon the astro-theological story of Horus, the sun god of Egypt. His name in different Egyptian traditions was Amen-Ra. And again, in Christianity, the name is invoked in prayer. We say Amen at the end of a Christian prayer. It's an invocation to the sun god Amen-Ra. Specifically, Amen-Ra is the incarnation of the solar disk at the zenith, or the highest point in the sky. Hence, at the end of prayer, you're invoking higher light, you know, the highest point of the sun, to say Amen. And the symbol is the cross, the sun on the cross of the zodiac. And I am placing the upright triangle, or what we talked about in part one, known as the blade, a simple phallic symbol or male energy symbol. So we see this is the predominant religion of the Western Hemisphere, or the quote-unquote left brain of the earth. This religion totally dominates the Western Hemisphere, because the Western Hemisphere of the earth is the left brain hemisphere of the planet. Okay? The religion that totally dominates the Eastern Hemisphere of the earth is Islam. And Islam takes its name after Isis, the moon goddess. Islam means surrender. That's what the word Islam means, surrender to God. Because this is a right brain hemisphere concept, surrender, okay? Particularly if one is really imbalanced, one would want to surrender or become dominated. So you have a dominator half of the brain, you have a emotional half of the brain, okay? Look at the symbol of Islam, the crescent moon, right? One of the major symbols of the religion. And the inverted triangle being one of the symbols that I'm associating with sacred feminine energy, the chalice. It is the lunar or the right hemispherical part of the brain symbol. So there's a third great world religion, and it's in the Middle East, the middle part of the brain. And we see it's associated with Osiris, the god of thought, the father god, right? In Canaanite tradition and in Phoenician tradition, he was associated with Saturn, the Saturnian god. Also took the name El. This is the religion of Judaism. Okay, Judaism is based on the Father God, the Old Testament God. The name of the Old Testament God in the Old Testament is Elohim. Okay? Why is Elohim plural? It's plural. That's a plural form of the word El. It's plural because it's the religious sect, the Astro-Theological sect, given to the stars and planets of which there is more than one. Plural. That is why it is Elohim and not just El in Judaism. And of course, its symbol is the star. And it's the combination of the male and female in the middle. Okay? But overall, look at how structurally what's playing out on the earth is playing out. Right? We have the left brain male dominator, right? Solar imbalanced west, waging war on the eastern half of the earth brain, okay, toward the Islamic nations, Islamic religions of the world. This is it's the Hermetic principle at work. This is the principle of as above, so below, as within, so without. As goes on in the consciousness of the individual monads of consciousness, or the people, the cells of the planetary body, it will be reflected at a macrocosmic level. Okay? And we're seeing it actually play out. The imbalances in the human brain are playing out on the global Earth brain. We understand when we put these three together, right? Isis plus Ra plus El gives us the term Israel. Why is this the center, the seat of all the conflict that's really going on? Well, we have to understand that these sects of Astro-Theology really gathered and came together at this region of the world, in the Middle East. That's where they really consolidated and came together and formed the religions, if you study where the religions really derived from. They all formed at that region of the earth. They came out of the mystery traditions, they formed these astro-theological sects, and then the religions were born as a result of those. Okay? And this is simply the region of the world that happened, but moreover, why we're seeing so much conflict play out in that area of the world, is in the Middle East, is because if you go and I'm going to go back and let's look at the earth brain one more time. If you look at this as your brain, you place your head looking that way, okay? And you see that this is the left brain hemisphere and that's the right brain hemisphere, right? You'll notice that this part of the world, the Middle East, is actually the back of the head of the earth brain. It isn't the prefrontal cortex of the earth. Okay, it's not the front, right? Or where the third eye opens. That would be in the middle, symbolically and phonetically symbolic of the Pacific Ocean, the ocean of peace. Well, this is the ocean of peace in an individual, the prefrontal neocortex, and that would be the opposite side of the earth, the Pacific Ocean, with what I consider the Hawaiian Islands symbolically to be the third eye of the earth. You know, with the eruption of the Mauna Kea volcano there being the light coming from the third eye of the planetary brain, symbolically. But all the conflict in the world's happening on the exact opposite side of the earth. Literally 180 degrees. You could take a globe, find the Hawaiian Islands, go 180 degrees, and you're in the Middle Eastern region of the world. This is because this region of the world is the R complex of the earth brain. It is the cerebellum of the earth, part of the R complex with the brain stem, the two parts that make up the R complex. So that's why all the conflict and strife and war is going on in that region of the earth. That's where all the negative effects of the imbalance, the left brain imbalance and right brain imbalance, are playing out on the surface of the earth. And it also will explain why Israel is influential very influential in world affairs, being such a small country relatively and population-wise. It holds this influence because this is where these astro-theological centers actually came together. That's the reason. It doesn't really have to do with anything. It has nothing to do with race or religion or anything like that. This is where these ideologies came together and formulated the religions of the world, and that's still why that region of the world holds so much influence and so much power, even over much more populous countries. That's why they have so much of an influence. It is a symbolic and a mystical influence that it actually has, because many of the controllers are really still advocates and still acolytes of these mystery traditions and of these astro-theological sects, you could say, okay? And that is where part 2 is going to end, okay? Part 3, I'm going to go into the influence of symbolism on the subconscious mind, how symbols, words, patterns, go to work through advertising, on money, in architecture, things like that. And I call that section subversive symbolism, because symbols are living embodiments of ideas, forming conceptual ideas. If we can't read that language, we're powerless to understand what's being said to us at a subconscious level. And then the second part of this third part of the presentation will be what I call chaos sorcery, or the modified Hegelian dialectic. Okay? It is the idea of creating a problem that you already have a solution in wait for. You create a problem so that you put other people into a fear vibration of consciousness, and then you step forward with a predetermined plan, a predetermined solution that people would not have otherwise gone for. But because they're in fear and they're looking for a savior, they're looking for a father figure to protect them from the chaos, they'll go along with the plan. That's the problem reaction solution, or what I term chaos sorcery. Okay? That's what part 3 will deal with. So that's the end of the lecture for today. I thank you.